Hi folks, welcome to the Bodybuilding Authority, and this one's got the Classic Physique world spinning. Mike Sommerfeld, incredible shape, lots of size, but did he bend the rules to make weight? Let's look at the photos, the numbers, and the truth behind this controversy because it's all over the place. I'm seeing it on every bodybuilding social media, Nick Strength and Power. Everyone's talking about this so-called controversy. And of course, we've seen, I guess this started with the Brazil fans, who want to make sure that his height and weight, the measurements make sense. We'll get into that in a little more detail in a bit because honestly, the height to weight thing drives me crazy. But there is some controversy here, and for good reason. Now, the video or the picture that came out shows them measuring Mike Sommerfeld at the Mr. Olympia last year, and they are measuring at the very top of his hair, and that allowed him to measure in at just over 5'9". So he came in at 5'9" and a tiny little bit, which moved him up to another category. So if he would have measured 5'9", he would have only been able to weigh 204 pounds based on the current criteria. But if he measured in at 5'9" and a quarter, that moved him up to the next one, which allowed him 8 more pounds. So the limit's 212 pounds at 5'9" and a quarter. And that's a big difference because Mike, it would be impossible, not impossible, but I guess at this stage, it would be impossible for him to weigh under 204 pounds. If he comes into the Olympia next week and they do his height again and he's only 5'9", then his weight is 204. And last year at 5'9" and a quarter, he weighed in at the limit of 212 pounds in the next category up. So there is some controversy here because, you look at, I looked at a video yesterday of Brion, and Brion, when you have that high top, you can add 3 inches to your height. I mean, it really, and those inches matter because for every inch, there's a lot more weight that you can put on as a bodybuilder. Now, this whole controversy, I think it has to do with Ramon, Dino, and the fact that he's a certain height, and they want to make sure that, the weight category for that height, or that the weight for that height is fair. And if Mike can put on extra weight to the tune of 8 pounds of muscle, then he can come in much bigger than somebody who is at 5'9", not 5'9" and a quarter. Now, there's a viral, the video that came out showing him the height. And yes, they didn't pat his hair down. Maybe he fluffed up his hair that day, and I'm sure there's others. So basically what it means is if you're a bald bodybuilder, you're being penalized in Classic Physique. So my advice is get some hair done, get some growth in your hair and rise that hair up so you can weigh more on stage in Classic. The whole thing's silly. Did he add volume to his hair? I don't know, but it sure looks like it from the video that they're measuring the top of his hair, not the top of his head. So there's some controversy there, and rightfully so. So the way that it works, and it's, up to and including 5'4", you can weigh 177 pounds. Up to and including 5'9", you can weigh 204. But if you're 5'9" and a quarter, you can weigh 212. That's an 8-pound difference, an 8-pound advantage for anybody that is, when their height is being done, if they got some extra hair up there, they can actually weigh more. It's silly. Someone like Chris Bumstead, 6'1", 6'2", 234 to 242 pounds, depending on how tall he was that day. But again, those measurements really matter. And personally, I think they are ridiculous. I think what's happened in Classic Physique, and you can see by what's happened to Ramon, Dino too, they are sacrificing a ton of muscle to make these categories based on their height. So their height, let's say 5'11" for if he's 5'11", 5'10", 5'11". If is 5'11", he can weigh up to 219 pounds in Classic Physique. Now, in open bodybuilding, he can weigh 240, 250, 260, 300 pounds if he wants. So that's the difference. These guys are sacrificing a lot of size to make that weight category and the height category in Classic Physique. So I personally think it should be overhauled. But then we run into this. A lot of people were commenting this year that Mike is too big for Classic Physique and that his body is starting to, it's starting to look more like an open bodybuilder or a 212 bodybuilder for sure. Do I think Mike could slide into 212 at 5'9" and do really well in the 212 bodybuilding? Sure, I think he would do great in open bodybuilding because he is huge for Classic Physique. And again, I'm not sure if that's where the judges are going, but if the judges are going for size, like someone like Mike, then they might as well take the weight categories out and just make it bodybuilding, because it's not Classic Physique. These I understand why they were put in place. They were put in place because they wanted to try to keep those physiques with classic lines. They wanted to try to keep the weight under control, the size under control. But there was sort of an unfair, there was an unfair advantage for taller bodybuilders because you could pack on a lot more size, and on stage, you look gigantic. Someone that's 5'6", 5'7", weighing 187 pounds against someone like Chris Bumstead weighing 240 pounds, doesn't really, that's really not fair. But it is what it is. And there have been shorter Classic Physique guys that have, Mike, there's a lot of tall bodybuilders that have lost to shorter bodybuilders in Classic Physique. It is a thing. But the system to me is interesting because a half inch, a quarter inch actually does make a big difference. It bumps somebody up to the next category, and that's potentially 8 pounds more. But when you look at some of these pictures, when you look at him standing next to Chris, when you look at him standing next to Ramon, when you look at him standing next to other people, Mike's not a tall guy. Let's just make that clear. He's not a tall guy. But if they measure him by his hair, then he does get an extra 8 pounds. And that's what people are claiming, is that he's up in a different category based on weight, and he's allowed to put on more muscle. And that gives him an advantage over someone like Ramon Dino, who has to sacrifice a lot of muscle to make weight. So I don't know that it's fair. My opinion on the whole thing is that the height to weight thing is kind of silly. They got to make some adjustments or things there. But I will say this. I don't think Mike cheated on purpose. I think Mike, is he getting to the gray line with regards to the rules? Maybe. Is he smart by adding some extra volume to his hair and caking it in there so that he gets an extra quarter inch? Sure. Do I think he's cheating the system? No, I don't think it matters. I think if Mike came in at 204 pounds instead of 212 pounds, he would have still finished second to Chris Bumstead last year, and he'd still have a really good opportunity to win Classic Physique this year. Do I personally think he's going to win? I'm going to save that for my next video when I give you my top 5 predictions for the Classic Physique Mr. Olympia coming up next week. Here's a hint. No, I don't think Mike's going to win the Classic Physique at the Mr. Olympia this year. I think there's someone else that's going to win it, and you got to tune into my next video to find out who I think is going to win Classic Physique next week at the Mr. Olympia. Now, again, let's just, the conspiracy theories and everything that's out there, again, it's mostly coming from the Brazilian fans, which, hey, listen, I'm a big fan. Those Brazilian fans are hardcore. They love their Brazilian bodybuilders, and anything they can do to stir up some controversy and get people thinking that maybe Mike cheated, that maybe it's, maybe he shouldn't make weight if he comes in at 212 next week and he's only measured in at 5'9", he won't make the weight. And if he doesn't make the weight, he doesn't compete. So this isn't about bashing Mike Sommerfeld, but Mike has to figure this out too, by the way. Right now, this is controversial, and Mike is probably thinking to himself, holy jumpins, I'm 212 pounds because they measured me last year. What if they measure me again and I'm only 5'9"? So Mike should probably look at his weight and figure out what the fall, like if he doesn't make weight, what does he do? If they measure him at 5'9", which means he can only come in at 204 and he's weighing 212 pounds. What then? Give me your opinion below. Do you think that Mike is actually 5'9¼ or do you think he's under 5'9" and just kind of working the system? And do you think it's a fair system? You know, how do we change it if it's not fair, this height to weight thing? Like, give me your thoughts and your opinions on what you think should be done in the classic physique category. You know, what are they going to start doing? Making sure that everybody's bald when they come for their height measurements. They got to have no hair. Is that a rule that should be put in place? What do you think? Let me know. But do you think Mike cheated the system, or is this all been blown out of proportion just to create some controversy? Drop your takes below. I'll be reading every single comment, and I'll give you my comments in response to those as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for doing that. There's a free cheat sheet available in the link below. Check that out as well. I did that up just for you. And don't forget to watch the next video. It's coming up soon. Take care, guys.